Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name's Sura. I'm a meditation coach and trainer. And today we're going to talk about anger and rage and how to apply our practice when we experience these powerful emotions and how to skillfully transform our anger into compassion. We're at a time today where people are angry with, our nation is rioting because of police brutality and the death of Black lives. People want to express their anger, and people are angry on all sides. So what do we do when we feel triggered by someone else's behavior or their actions or their words? What can we do in our own self and take responsibility within ourselves so that we don't get consumed by our own rage? And I just want to say too that there's nothing wrong in experiencing anger and rage, especially in the face of injustice and violence. But what's important is what we do with that anger. What you do with the anger that you feel. And the practice of loving kindness is a subtly powerful practice that we can hold for ourselves, and we learn how to hold that for ourselves, kindness towards ourselves, when we feel hard emotions. And when we learn how to practice self-compassion, we can extend that to others, even people that we might not understand or that we may not align with or resonate with. And why is this practice so important? Actually, they found that the practice of metta, which is loving kindness, is vital to our health, that it actually decreases stress and cortisol levels for us. We often do have stress when there are tensions, relational tensions, especially at home, right? We can get triggered by our partner, our family members. We can get triggered by our coworkers. We can get triggered on Facebook. We can get triggered by the news. We can get triggered by any little thing. And what happens when we perceive something outside of ourselves as a threat to our own sense of reality, our own beliefs, our values, our ego, even a threat to our very existence? So what happens is that we witness something outside of ourselves and it triggers a response within us. It's a stress response. And we might then, take it to the next level. We might have anger and we might want to engage in violence and even abuse. So that's what happens is as you get triggered, maybe even at the household level, if you trigger your partner and it goes back and forth, that trigger goes back and forth, it becomes toxic. You're projecting your anger or your unmet needs or unmet desires onto your partner. Your partner projects it back to you. It goes back and forth. There's a lot of conditional love and withholding or even punishment in that struggle. And it can become toxic and then even abusive. And we see this micro level in play right now at the macro level of what's happening. There's a racial divide that's happening in our country and our world today, where, your sense of reality doesn't match my sense of reality. And there can only be one truth. It's either I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. So that's the mentality that we buy into when we're triggered. When we're triggered, it's that if your reality is right, it threatens my reality and the existence that I've built my reality upon. So let's just first start there. That when we're triggered, we're thinking in polarity, that you're right, I'm wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. And then this happens. And when we get triggered by something that causes us pain, we want to push it away, make it wrong. We want to make it go away, and we want to change it. We want what's outside to change to fit what resonates with our own reality. Otherwise, we won't be happy. So there's a lot of conditional relating that happens when we get triggered. So first, recognizing that, and I want you to think about when soldiers or frontline workers experience post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They have an outside trigger. Their inside response is overblown to the outside trigger. So they really do perceive the outside trigger as being a huge threat to their survival. And there's an overreaction. And then what happens is you're stuck in the stress brain. So you get stuck in the trigger. So that's what happens when we get angry, is we become enraged and we can get stuck in the anger. We keep channeling the anger, and we keep feeling this certain level of rage or outrage that it just keeps turning inside of us. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, except for that if it starts to consume us and really deplete our energy and our focus, because it's possible that we get so consumed by anger that we lose our way. We lose touch with what's truly in service. We lose touch with balance. We lose touch with intentional focus. And it feels good initially to have an outburst and to express our anger. And there's a lot of healthy ways to communicate what we feel inside. You know, it might start with journaling and writing down exactly how we feel and why we feel that way. And there's something very cathartic about putting our feelings onto the page and really seeing, you know, what's true for us and having that experience. We can also talk to somebody that we trust who will listen to us and allow us to, you know, speak our grievances and what we're upset about. So there are these ways that we can be with our anger. We can even sit with our anger. We can sit with our anger and feel it and practice that loving kindness towards ourselves. So that's what we can start with. But how do we move out of being angry? How do we move out of our triggers? So now when we're triggered, we have that over response, and then it becomes me against you. So it's me against you. And what happens when that happens? Separation. So we want to separate ourselves from the thing that's causing us pain. And we could call this separation, we could call it segregation, we can call it discrimination, whatever you want to call it, that says, look, you're bad, you're wrong, you go away, you change, where there is now this distance that's created. And when we come back to ourselves, when we come back to our center, and if you're somebody who practices meditation every day, you begin to realize that we all share commonality and that we are indeed all connected, that there is nothing that actually separates us. So the first step is to recognize that I'm triggered and I'm angry and to acknowledge fully your trigger and your anger, who triggered you, and why you were triggered. What did that bring up for you? What belief, what part of you did you feel like you had to hold on to so tightly to make somebody else wrong or to push them away? So that's the first step. And then the second is that actually we all have all our own emotional realities. Someone else's life and upbringing is completely different from our own, and that both of our realities can be right. So just because we don't see things exactly the way other people do, there was something that happened in their life experience that caused them to behave and act in ways that we might not understand. So that's the second thing, is to connect to a shared connection or reality. And that both realities or all realities can coexist and they can all be right. It's not just this or that. It's this and that. That when we start taking an inclusive perspective, it helps to decrease our own suffering. So when we're triggered, we acknowledge that we're triggered. We also acknowledge that somebody else's reality is also just as valuable as our own, even if we don't agree with it. And then we can start to de-escalate that trigger and understand that it's not about you. It's not about you. We don't have to take it personally that somebody's acted in a certain way or in a cruel way. We can start to depersonalize it. And that's when we start to go transpersonal, where we start to transcend just the individuals, but to transcend, and see from a bigger, more holistic perspective. So the third step is then to be proactive. And to be proactive means I'm now going to practice compassion towards myself and others. And the way metta meditation works is that first you practice compassion towards yourself, and then towards somebody that you love and admire, then towards a neutral person, like an acquaintance, and then towards somebody that you deeply detest or that you don't agree with, somebody you would even consider an enemy. And you say a short series of phrases. May all beings be free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. So it can be any short series of phrases, but you're extending your goodwill and intention in a concentric circle. So it starts with yourself, then with somebody you love, then with somebody you feel neutral about, then with somebody that you have challenges with. And there's something deeply powerful about this very simple practice. And at first it might feel a little formulaic because you're saying the words, but maybe it's challenging to actually wish freedom and wish peace and wish happiness for somebody that you don't agree with. And that can be challenging. But over time, as you practice this more and more, and you actually practice it every day consciously and proactively, it does begin to shift. And compassion is one of the highest states we can connect to that truly releases all stress, fear, and separation. And when you truly release all stress, fear, separation, tension, then you become so deeply empowered. You can do anything because you don't take things on, you don't take things personally, you accept people for who they are, you accept situations as what they are. And when we're not consumed in being an agitated or angry state, we actually have the resource within ourselves, the peace and the wisdom to now respond skillfully to situations rather than react to our trigger. So when we react to our trigger, we're acting from the stress brain, the fight or flight, where we either want to fight or run away, and we act from that place. So if you're able to, in the moment of being triggered, recognize I'm being triggered and take a few breaths in that moment. And I recommend putting your hands on yourself, because there's something about just this feeling of being held or protected and just putting energy back into yourself, kind of gathering yourself back up again, that allows you to come back to your center, to disengage, and then to come back and engage when you've released your anger, your tension, your upset. And you can come back and have a conducive connection or relationship once you have found your own center of balance and gotten really in touch with your own anger and your own emotions. And you didn't necessarily project all your emotions onto somebody else, even if they did activate those emotions. Now, we might not always have this ability or the space to do this, because we might be in a situation where we're being made to act in the moment. But this is the gift that meditation has to offer us, is the ability to come back to our center, to breathe, and to find this space within ourselves to include everyone. It's that space of love. Love is spacious, it's inclusive, it's expansive. It's not me against you trying to fight within this little space, but it is all inclusive. Everything can coexist in this space. And if we keep pushing back against our triggers, those triggers will still always be there. They'll still always be there, but we've always had war, and we've always had this level of discrimination. It's what we choose to do with it that matters most. That's when we really begin to transform it. So the way we choose to engage in anything is, that reflects, where we are in our practice and how we can really apply our practice in our everyday life. Okay, I know what I forgot to talk about, the 5 tools. So I'm going to run through these 5 tools quickly. So these are the tools, the mindful tools. The first one is non-reactivity. And that's what I shared with you earlier, is that when you get triggered, to allow yourself a moment to become neutral and detach. Just take a moment of being detached. Notice what you saw coming in as a threat or as offensive or as even injustice, and notice that and let yourself be with it for just a moment in a place of detachment. Let yourself be detached. And how do we learn this in meditation? We watch our own thoughts and we watch them go by like clouds in the sky. So even if somebody sends us something, we don't have to catch it. We don't have to wrap ourselves up around it. We can just watch it go by for a moment and just say, isn't that interesting? As soon as this person did that or said that, I felt like, I felt this rage come up in me. I felt all this energy surge come up in me. And so you're going to have a moment of non-reactivity. So that's the first mindful tool, non-reactivity, detachment, or neutrality. So you decharge whatever's coming through. The second mindful tool is empathy or compassion. Empathy is the willingness to be one with someone else. Empathy is, I am willing to feel you and hear you and see you, even if I don't agree with you. Even if what you value is different from what I value. And it's the willingness to understand. It's so much easier to snap into judgment and to snap into you're wrong or to push them back It's much harder to practice empathy in challenging situations. So empathy is the second skill. The third is listening. Listening. The willingness to really listen to someone that you don't agree with. Imagine if we had a platform of dialogue between whites, blacks, any people of color, Asian people. We had this platform where everybody could be seen and heard, really listened to, without saying, well, this is how I see it and this is how I feel about it, but just listening to the other, because it's so healing when you really take time to listen. The fourth is positive action. So positive action is, now that I've listened to what you've had to say, and I've listened to your pain and your suffering and how this has affected your community, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just going to take that in and not do anything. I now know, through my understanding, my actions, my intentions, the way I show up in my community, I will take positive action towards creating connection. So it's a commitment to yourself that now that you're aware and you've really listened and you understood and you empathize, that you're willing to take positive action towards creating connection between yourself and others, or between yourself and other communities. And that is the last mindful tool, is connection, is finding the common connection with anyone. Are you willing to? Even somebody that you dislike. The reason why we have so much misunderstanding and segregation and discrimination is oftentimes is we don't even have that integration or that diversity in the first place. So without that diversity, integration, conversation, and dialogue, it can really become, me versus you. If I have very limited interaction with somebody of a different race, then my likelihood of misunderstanding people from other backgrounds is going to increase, because I simply haven't had that chance to connect on a human to human, soul to soul level with another person. So that's the fifth mindful tool, is connection. Practice these tools and you'll learn how to transform hate, anger, rage into compassion by taking down our triggers, de-escalating them, knowing I am triggered, I'm going to go be with this before I project it outwards in a non-conducive way. And when I feel ready to respond skillfully from my center or from my heart, when I'm willing to respond from a deeper place within myself, not just the stress brain, that's when I've learned how to transform emotions. And we can alchemize our emotions. Our emotions are so powerful. They can propel us. They can give us the energy and the passion to create positive change. And that's what we need today. We need people who are taking action, who are activists, and put that energy in a positive way into the world, not out of our anger, but from our love, our deep love, empathy, and understanding for all of humankind. And when we act from that place, we take our anger, we transform it to a higher level, the collective level, and we help contribute to collective healing on the planet. So thank you so much for taking time to listen and to be part of this. I'm going to answer any questions and we'll close with a short metta meditation.